right, good morning. Welcome to the morning briefing. It's Thursday, April 21st, episode 175. Burt, I'm Phil Brandt, and with me, as always, is your friend and mine, Burt Garland, shareholder with Ogletree Deacons. It is our goal to keep you informed so you can more effectively lead your organization. We got lots to talk about today, Burt. The mask mandate, I think, is ending, but there's appeals. I don't know. I'd love to get your opinion on that. I actually think the unions are attacking the Apple Store. I know that's been quite a bit of discussion and in the news lately, but there seems to be a full-on press on the Apple stores. Would like to know if you're aware of that and what might be happening there. We got bonus retention, and if we have time, I'd like to discuss electrical car reimbursement mileage. That has been a topic that's been coming up around here in the office from our members, and I thought we could chat about that a little bit as well. We do have a poll question today, and with the mask mandate ending, will your business travel increase with your organization? So you're planning to increase your business travel now that the mask mandate is ending. And if so, we'd like to know your answers. You can click on the box there and give us your poll question results from there. So Burt, let's talk about this mask mandate and what is going on and the appeals and what should we do and what is actually happening in your opinion?
Yeah, very interesting, Phil. Good morning. Good to see
you.
But
first, look at this guy. Look at him. He's all cleaned up. Your mother would be so proud of you, Burton.
She would. Maybe only rivaling how proud my wife is of me that most of the hair has been cut off. I don't know. Maybe it's synonymous or the timing is equivalent to the mask mandate ending. Maybe it means COVID's finally getting behind us. Something just told me it was time for a haircut finally.
I know the ladies around the AIM office are going to be really happy. I can think a few of them in particular have been campaigning for you to clean it up a little bit, and it looks good. So maybe the midlife crisis is coming to an end, yeah?
the midlife COVID crisis, yes. Maybe coming to an end. We should only be so lucky. So yeah, very interesting development. I'm sure most people have heard or read by now that a court, the United States District Court, issued a injunction overturning the Biden administration's additional 2-week extension of masking on federal transportation. In response to that, almost immediately, most of the airlines, if not all of them, came out and said that they are no longer enforcing masking on their airplanes. There was a viral video of, I think it was a Southwest Airlines flight attendant who announced no masking and literally did that to tears and to applause on the airplane. The TSA, interestingly, also said immediately that they were no longer going to be requiring masking in airports. Now, the TSA made their comment almost immediately after the district court's ruling. President Biden also made a statement almost immediately after the court ruling that all of a sudden it's up to people. It's people's choice whether they decide to wear a mask or not, and it depends on their level of risk, their risk tolerance.
Whoa, say that again. What did President Biden say? He's not leaving decisions up to people, is he?
Well, that's what the comment would indicate. But then shortly after that statement was made and the TSA made their announcement that they're no longer going to be enforcing masks on federal transportation, yesterday the Department of Justice announced that it was appealing the judge's ruling. For his part, our friend Dr. Fauci made a statement saying that he thought it was a shame that the courts intruded upon the authority of the CDC. And so we'll have to sort of see what shakes out. But as of right now, sitting here today, there is no longer a mask mandate for federal transportation. So that means on airplanes, Amtrak, and even on the bus system, I think they could voluntarily choose to require masks still, the airlines, but in the other federal transportation entities, but they are no longer required by federal law to have their passengers mask up.
Yeah, and I've noticed correspondingly, the airline stock prices have been increasing the last several days with that news as well. As a proud owner of Delta Airlines stock, I'm almost ready to jump out of that one now. It's about reaching its max potential, I think. So that's interesting news. A little bit of left hand, right hand. What are we trying to achieve in a united way? It seems to be confusing, but bottom line is it's not required. It's in the appeal process. And I guess, Burt, are they actually appealing the CDC's decision on that?
No. So what the Department of Justice would be doing is appealing the court's decision to overturn the Biden administration's additional 2-week extension of the federal mask mandate. And so the mask mandate was supposed to expire, I believe it was April 18th, a couple of days ago. And then right before its expiration, the administration extended the mask mandate for an additional 2 weeks.
Okay, great. Well, that's good. So answer the poll question. I'm curious if that impacts your travel plans for your business or not. But in my opinion, I'm happy for that to go away. I feel like it should be our choice and been our choice all along, but that's Phil Brandt. I recognize we still need to follow the rules that are set in place by our government, and I also support that concept in general as well.
And Phil, just to give the other side of that the idea, sure, we all think it should be our choice and up to us, but obviously the idea behind the masking with COVID is it's not just about us, it's about everyone else out there, and only if we're wearing masks can we do our part to protect everyone else. I'm not saying which way is the right way, but I do think that there is so much mask fatigue in this country that and elsewhere that people, for the most part, are happy to get rid of the mask. Although I say that, and there was an AP poll that was conducted yesterday that showed, at least in that poll, that a slight majority of Americans still favor masking.
Yeah, and I'm not against the masking. I think if things are on the rise and it's the right thing to do and you're in a mode of crisis, but I think we're definitely out of that mode of crisis at this moment anyhow.
At least crisis.
I'm sorry?
At least that crisis.
At least that crisis, and that's my point. But I'm just noticing some of the chat line here, and it looks like there's some chat that business travel is definitely starting to increase, but has nothing to do with mask mandating or not. I don't know about you and where you're at as you're listening to the program, but the amount of traffic back on the highways is increasing significantly, suggesting more and more people are traveling about and moving to and from work, as it seems to be a rush hour pattern of traffic. So I, for one, am happy that we continue to get back to what we would consider normal. Thank goodness. All right, Burt. So it looks like the unions, and we've had a lot of conversation about this, they're in the news a lot. Our government is doing what they can to support their investors, that being the AFL-CIO and others. What is happening with the Apple stores? They appear to be under attack from the unions now.
Yeah, so let me just make a comment real quickly that we are really seeing a sea change in what unions are doing these days compared to history. We've talked about that unionization back in even as recently as the 1980s, although, gosh, I say that, and that was 50 years ago. But back in the 1980s, unionization was still above or right around 20%.
You know, some of our listeners weren't born in 1980, Burt.
I think a lot of our listeners weren't born in 1980. And as somebody pointed out to me the other day, and I think I may have made the comment on the program that, if you were born in 1970 was what, 52 years ago. That's the same distance that if you were alive in 1970, that's when World War I happened. If you go back the same 50 years, we're talking roughly World War I. But from 1970 forward, that gets us to today. So that kind of puts it in perspective for you, the timing. But in any event, even back in the 1980s, unionization in this country was still hovering in the 20% area. And as we've talked on the program, unionization in the private sector these days is down to about 6.2%. As manufacturing, it's no coincidence that as manufacturing in this country seemed to be getting offshored quite a bit through the 80s into the 90s, the 2000s, unionization continued to plummet. Now, while we've seen a resurgence in manufacturing in the United States, especially under the Trump administration, the unions were not successful in getting representation in those unionized facilities. Starting probably about 15 years ago, unions made a concerted effort. How about that for throwing in some buzzwords? They made a concerted effort to shift where they were trying to organize. And they really started going after what we would typically consider to be the service industries rather than manufacturing. So quite a bit in hospitals. Hospital unionization has been relatively strong. And then they've also made quite an effort to try to organize fast food restaurants. We've talked before about all of these workers' organizations. We've heard about the movement for the Fight for 15. The unions are behind all of those people's movements to increase wages in the service sector. Also, commercial cleaning has been an area that the unions have found a lot of success in addition to hospitals, commercial food service at universities and those types of employers. So it's really interesting now that I think this next step toward to try to organize the Amazons with distribution centers and then trying to organize Apple with respect to their stores, it represents sort of the next step that they're really not just focused on the restaurants any longer, and some of those more traditional service industries of like the cleaning contractors, that they're actually going after retail workers. And they recognize the unions, it's taken them a long time, but they are having some success, at least in filing petitions in these sectors with where you have traditional service. And again, retail is one of them. Now, with respect to Apple, it's really interesting because you consider, you hear a lot of talk about the Apples of the world and some of the other Silicon Valley companies that have sort of gone what you might consider woke, or the media portrays as these companies have gone woke on their policies and everything. Well, if they've truly gone woke, they shouldn't really oppose unionization. But let me tell you, I think they're going to fight these unionization efforts very hard. I don't know what an Apple Store employee earns these days, but what they are saying is the employees who are pursuing these petitions is that an Apple employee should earn $30 per hour for working in an Apple store. And so if you equate that out, that's roughly $60,000 a year that these employees believe they should be making. So that would represent,
that's a lot of money to sell a telephone. And what always surprises me about this, this last recent trend, and I say it's a recent trend, but I mean it's been 10 years now, particularly with the unions run on like fast foods, and some of that is propaganda, and it's getting them in the news, and it's big target, and all these other things that are also important to their campaigning efforts, but they're not career type jobs, right? I mean, McDonald's is not a career to serve French fries. Now, maybe some people are in the position where they bounce around in service jobs like that for much of their life. But very different than, as you say, in 1980, when I was more familiar with what the union activity was doing, was really focusing on businesses that had, career aspirations to it. So the reality is today we can vote, we can petition for our union, we can vote for the union. And my whole store can turn over within 6 months, whole new employees. It had nothing to do with that, but I'm stuck with the union now until it was voted out, which is really difficult to achieve.
Yeah.
And
Great.
that's really the scary part for me, for any of our listeners that, have a high transient workforce that turn over very frequently. And in today's world of the great resignation, that's many of us. That's a concern. And we're bringing those people in, maybe not even aware of it. They're achieving their goal and then exiting out.
Yeah, and Phil, what you're referring to right there is what's called salting
Yes.
under the law, and that is that there are employees, people who actually are employed by unions to go out and get jobs at employers. And then the whole purpose, they're not really interested in working for that employer. No. What they're really interested in doing is getting a union in that employer. And so You're exactly right. With a somewhat transient workforce in a lot of these service industries, employees come and they go. You may get a group of employees that come into the organization, into the fast food franchise, for example. They organize the location, and then, like you said, a couple months later, none of those employees who voted for the union are even employed any longer, yet the company is stuck with the union. And that's the unions recognize this. And on one hand, it does make it hard to organize these facilities because you have to have employees take initiative to collect signatures, to file a petition. The union will help with all of that. But then there's campaigning, and they have to try to get the other employees to vote in favor of the union. And so it is very difficult to organize in this sector. But the unions are definitely making an effort to do it. Now, one thing that I think is going to be really interesting to see how this shakes out is we all know that many years ago, let's go back to the 1980s, Phil, which we've already talked about today. You would go to your average fast food restaurant and you'd order your meal, and what would come out on the counter was your full meal. And what I mean by that is your drink would be filled behind the counter by somebody, one of the employees. And what the fast food restaurants realized through the 1980s and into the 1990s and early 2000s is that it's a heck of a lot less expensive to have customers refilling or filling up their own drinks. It was faster, number one, and number two, it was less expensive. They did a calculation that
and I don't make a mistake when I fill my own drink.
Well, I bet you do sometimes, though, Phil. They do. They realized, though, that they did a calculation that basically said that we can save X amount of dollars per hour or per day by having the customers fill their drinks. And even if customers are going back and getting refills, the cost of soda is so cheap, it's a heck of a lot less expensive to pay for people getting refills than it is to pay for labor to handle those drinks. And again, it was speed and cost. Yeah. And, so what's the next step in that? What have we seen really taking over probably in the last 10 years, but the self-ordering kiosks. And so you're going to continue to see a lot of that. If fast food workers are making $15 an hour or $20 an hour, business will adjust, and they will decide, if we're having to double wages, we're going to do the same amount of work that we used to do with half the employees. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens at Apple. Can they stomach a reduction in staff if the employees are making $30 an hour? And again, I have to preface that by saying I don't know what they're currently making in the store, but I'd be shocked if it was above $15 to $20 an hour for these people who work in the Apple store. And maybe a manager in the Apple store makes the equivalent of $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year, but the average employee that you interact with in the store is probably not making anywhere near that.
And I think the counter argument, and I get it, I understand it, is also, you're looking at the profits that organization like Apple is producing and the success that they're having, and the union's able to say, hey, you deserve your share of that. And look what, look what their stock price is doing. Look what the corporate execs are making. All of those things become important when you're in a union campaign, whether it's Apple or it's your business and you're listening to us today. Those are the things that, start to get exposed and start to create a rub, understandably, for that person working in store. I get their mindset on it. While I may not agree with it, I definitely understand the mindset. I want to just take our attention to the poll for a moment here. It looks like initial results are showing about a 50% with no increase in travel, and 30% are back to pre-pandemic levels. That would account to the traffic patterns that we're seeing, and 20 at some increase. So if you add that some increase and back to pre-pandemic, about half of our poll question respondees today are suggesting that there is an increase from where we were during pandemic times. Burt, you're talking about the 80s. I have to just pause. I think about the 80s. I'm guessing it was probably right around 1984. A little bit ditty with Jack and Diane comes out. I'm not sure exactly the year, but that is just and was one of my most favorite songs. Now, at the time when I would sing that song out as loud as I could driving down the road, I had no idea that I was going to get to meet, one of the world's most famous drummers from that song. And it's got a famous drum riff in it, and how that song goes. And he is going to be at our leadership conference on May 4th. Now, I know you're going to be somewhere at the Ogletree conference at that same time, and you sponsored a table at the conference, and I appreciate that. And what we're going to do with that table is we're going to deem that our Ogletree morning briefing table, and we are going to select 10 of our frequent listeners to attend and sit at that table together, and put them there to listen, not only to our keynote speaker, Kenny Arnoff, but participate throughout the day of the conference with over 10 breakout sessions and 3 keynote leadership topic speakers. Nick, can you play the promo video from Kenny? This dude is just cool. It's the only way to say it. Now, I'm a rock and roll fan, so I'm a little biased that way, but he has an amazing keynote speech that he gets that I know anyone who listens to this program will definitely enjoy his keynote. Nick, are you able to cue that up for us? Thank you.
Hey, I'm Kenny Aronoff in my studio, Uncommon Studios, LA. And I'm so excited to be speaking at the 2022 AAIM Leadership Conference in St. Louis on May 4th. AAIM has put together another amazing leadership conference, and I am so looking forward to sharing some of my valuable lessons I've learned throughout my career recording and performing with some of the most epic artists and bands in the history of rock and roll. Just like the business world, teamwork, innovation and creativity, connecting and communicating in order to collaborate are so critical to the success of any band or tour I've ever been on. Everyone has to contribute and play their role or part. Teams win Super Bowls, not individuals. However, we want to be the MVP on the team we're on, but it's for the team, the we, not the me. And even more important is leadership, especially when, where, and how you lead people, and from whatever role you're in. What's your purpose? What kind of leader do you want to be? Anyway, I'm so looking forward to sharing, talking, and hanging out with all of you. It's going to be a great day. It's a great event, and we will all learn from each other. Well, check out the website, AAIMLeadershipConference.com, and I'll see you there.
All right. To me, I don't know, Bert, I can't pull off the whole hand signs, the we, not the me, but this guy really is a phenomenal artist. And, he for a long time was the drummer for Fogerty, for John Cougar. He's played for Celine Dion, Lady Gaga, Bruno Mars. I mean, the guy has a list that goes on and on. I think it's something like 300 hit songs that he has been a part of. And that's just a phenomenal track record of success and really a role of leadership in the music industry. That story will translate. I promise you, I've heard it. It's excellent. And I'm excited for our members to hear that. And I just want to say thanks to you and Ogletree, because we're going to select 10 of our listeners at random to participate in the conference. So thanks for that, Burt. We appreciate your support in that event.
Absolutely happy to help out, and I'm disappointed I won't be able to attend the conference. I'll be at Ogletree's conference out in sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, presenting there as well. And actually, I'm talking on a topic related to COVID and sort of lessons learned during COVID, what worked, what didn't work. So once that program concludes, it's actually a workshop. I'll be happy to bring back some of the discussion that we had during that session, what business found did work and didn't work, and kind of how to be prepared for the next crisis, whatever that might be. Phil, real quickly, just a little bit of trivia for you. Have you ever heard of a company in St. Louis called the Dent Squad? Do you know what that is?
The Dent Squad?
Yeah.
No, I have not. Are we doing an advertisement, Burt?
It might be. It's a little paintless dent repair company up off.
Are we getting
Watson
paid for
Road.
this? I just want to check.
Are
Are you and I getting paid for this?
We're not. Just a little advertisement here, but a little paintless dent removal place up off of Watson Road. One of the first paintless dent removal companies in the United States. That were really kind of pioneers in this industry. And the founder of that company, he no longer runs it, but he was a guy named Robert Frank, and his nickname was Ferd. Have you ever heard of Ferd before?
No, I have not.
Just because you brought it up, Ferd was actually a guitarist for John Cougar Mellencamp. He began traveling with John Cougar and John Mellencamp now, and finished 3 albums with them. And on the 4th album, American Fool, he was the guitarist for Jack and Diane and Hurt So Good. So Ferd's a really nice guy. He lives here in St. Louis. He no longer owns the Dent Squad, but maybe you can get your drummer and Ferd back together for a reunion.
Well, no doubt they will know each other. So yes. Ferd is his name. I'm gonna follow up with you and get a little info and try and hook him up if I can, because we got a great band coming together. They've been practicing following the conference, but our lead singer for the band is one of the top 10 finalists for The Voice. A St. Louisan, one of the top 10 finalists for The Voice. You got Kenny as the drummer and these other wonderful musicians that are going to play, and free happy hour with beer and wine and all that stuff after the conference. It's going to be a lot of fun. Don't miss out from that standpoint. Burt, we have 2 minutes. I want to get to this question real quick from Emily. She's been patiently waiting for this. And it's got to do with retention bonus. We'd like to pay retention bonuses up front. This would be conducted for a couple of employees in different states, Virginia and New York in particular. Are we safe to put in writing and get an employee written signature that we have the right to claw back the bonus prorated from all final wages if they leave before the noted time frame?
So thanks for the question, Emily. I'm going to parse this out fairly finely for you.
Get that button ready, Nick. I think you might say depends. I feel it's coming.
I'm going to see if I can avoid it so my head doesn't explode. So really, by parsing this out very finely, the answer to your question, are you safe getting this put in writing, getting the employee's signature that you could deduct the retention bonus from final wages? The answer to that is yes, you're safe doing that, depending on, really that, it's up to each state on whether you can actually go through with it. So you can try to get the signature, but if you try to enforce that in certain states, that would actually be illegal. So you can get the signature stating that they will pay back a retention bonus, but there are several states that make it illegal to deduct anything from an employee's final paycheck. including a retention bonus, and that's even if they signed it. And let me give you an example of that. I'm not quite sure about the two specific states that you've asked about, so you will have to have a little bit of research done on those two states. But in Illinois, for example, you cannot get an employee to waive that law at the outset of employment. You can't get them to say, yes, on day one when I'm starting, or the day you give me the retention bonus, that if I end up leaving the employment 6 months from now, you can go ahead and deduct. You have to have what's called a contemporaneous authorization from the employee. In other words, the employee at the time they're receiving their final paycheck, that's when they would have to authorize the deduction. Missouri, you do not need that contemporaneous signature, although it is much better if you get the contemporaneous signature. You can get the employee's signature at the outset, that if they leave employment, you can then deduct for certain things from the final wages. Now, one thing I will say is make sure no matter what state you're in, do not deduct the employee below minimum wage at the time of their departure. So
Burt, let me just get a clarifying question. So getting a contemporaneous signature at the time of final payment, such as, all right, your final paycheck is, $2,000. You owe us $1,000 prorated for the sign-on bonus. Approve that deduction from your final check. And that's yes. At the time of payment, which in Illinois would be on departure.
Very close to it. On departure, very close to it. And the obvious problem with that, Phil, is that if you have an employee who's on the way out the door, the chances of them agreeing to have that $1,000 deducted from their final paycheck are pretty slim. And then you as the employer left with the calculus of, okay, well, now do I go after the employee? Do I sue the employee for breaching the contract to try to get back $1,000 when you know full well that it's going to cost you well over $1,000 to collect that $1,000?
And the follow-up question obviously is going to be, it's where the person works versus where the person lives. So where they spend the majority of their time working
yes, that's the
on
state.
The business. So I can work from home in Illinois on business in Arkansas 24, full time. Mm-hmm. So I would follow the rules of Arkansas, not the rules of Illinois.
Well, I think in large part, they would have to follow the rules of wherever they're being paid from. And wherever they're paying their taxes, that's an accountant question really to figure out which the proper jurisdiction is.
All right. So I hope that helps you out, Emily. If not, follow up with me or Burt. We'll be happy to help you out a little further. All right. Well, don't forget, May 4th is the Leadership Conference. Sign up now. There are limited seating available. We will be contacting 10 of our listeners who are frequent listeners. Thank you for always joining. We're going to give you the chance to attend the conference. I hope you will. It's going to be a fabulous show. And we will be back here next Thursday with the new improved haircut and beard trim of Burt Garland. See you then, 7:30 Central Standard Time. Bye-bye.
Tell your story, promote your products, communicate with your employees and customers vividly, dynamically, and powerfully. Whether it's a company video, recruitment video, online training, or live meeting, Feature Group can help you, from scripting to highly polished finished production. Whether it's live or on demand, we have the skills and equipment to wow your audience and drive your message home. Feature Group USA, the one-stop shop for all your broadcasting needs.